speak for.
Okay, we'll go ahead and get started, and we'll just start off with these first 20 minutes going commissioner around the table. So, Commissioner Milne.
Pass for the moment.
I was about to say you still have 3 more minutes.
Commissioner Nicolason.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. And, you know, my hope is that this isn't a moment for us to do what we're commonly or sometimes do at the end of a regular session meeting for commissioner comments. This, I think, in my mind, is an opportunity for us to, as a group of 5, and with our administrative assistant and the others that we're working with all the time, trying to catch up on some developments so that you know kind of what's going on some boards on which I'm sitting as liaison, and so I appreciate this opportunity. I would say that for MPO, Metropolitan Planning Organization, we had a meeting up in Bar None for the West Winds Road extension. It was rainy and cold, and there were a few members of the public that attended. The mayor of Bar None attended. We heard from the consultant that there were some options, and these options include, and the West Winds extension is to go from Bar None, the West Winds exit, to near where the railroad facility is near the airport. It doesn't go all the way to the West Yellowstone Road. And basically, the cost estimates were between $24 and $46 million. And I got the sense that the ball is kind of in the commission's court to take next steps. But I think one of my questions was, what are the economics of this, and does it make sense? Is it, worth kind of at the low end $25 million if we go a certain alignment? And I'm certainly a little bit skeptical, or at least concerned about the value of that project. So I'm interested in hearing more from other interested parties on why this would make economic sense, because I'm not sure, well, I don't think it does at this point. We could have perhaps an MPO presentation on the West Winds extension. I'm not sure the budget year being almost, or the fiscal year being almost upon us. I don't know if that's still an opportunity, but we can get more information for you guys if you'd like it. We're going to have a tour of the airport. I think that they are still trying to figure out a way forward with repairing and replacing some of the old roads out there, and then the tower, control tower, that's also an important issue for them. So we're going to go out and see them in August. I can't think of anything else that I need to bring to your attention, but I'd also, if you have questions on any of the boards I sit on or other questions for me, I'm happy to field them.
What are you doing for security at the library?
I'm not doing anything, but they are, and we saw it in their budget plan, wanting to, continue talks with the city. And I think that, the city is willing to talk to them about issues over there. And so I'm hopeful that they'll figure out something, maybe at some increased patrols or something. But I think the primary component, like we heard from Lisa, was the addition of an additional security person so that they have 2 pretty much at all times, and one can be inside, one can be outside, but an increased presence so that some of those issues we heard Lisa talk about hopefully won't repeat.
Are they, do you know whether they're getting any nearer to building a new library?
The question, I could barely hear you, so I don't know if anybody else can.
I didn't have this on, sorry.
I think the question is, are they getting any closer to building a new library?
Right.
And I would say the ball is still in the libraries and the foundation's court. They did make some contact with the consultant for a facility needs. I mean, it's not the current building needs over there. It's what does a 21st century library look like for a county and a community like ours? So they haven't heard back yet on that, but they are hopeful that they will in the next number of weeks. So I assume then the library or the foundation or both will come forward.
Thank you.
Commissioner Alert?
I think all of my committees are going to be happy with how they were treated in this budget process so far. I have asked the sheriff to prepare a letter concerning the security at the Townsend building that has to remain confidential and discussed probably in an executive session. And he's working on that, I think.
You already have it.
No, I don't have it yet. I have a letter. I do have a letter that Bart Olson wrote.
Yep.
It's a general outline. Do you have a copy of that? Okay, so this is a different letter I'm talking about. I really think that with the crisis center that we ought to figure out if there's enough money to help them get that one wing open. It's just like a hotel floor that isn't being used because they can't finish it. And of course they have to staff it and all of that, but the way things are going, these judges really don't want to sentence these kids to jail, and this is the closest thing they can send them to where they'll get help. So it's just something for the commissioners to think about in the future, I believe. I am concerned about the Joint Powers Board, the Amoco Joint Powers activities, for many reasons, but I'll entertain those at a later time. Thank you.
Good.
I had a question for Commissioner Laird.
Yeah, for sure.
I don't answer any questions.
You just ask them.
There's no cross-examination here, is there?
Two, I think the letter you're talking about from the courthouse, that'd be from the Courthouse Security Committee on a recommendation or a,
The one I have you seen the one I have?
is that from the committee or is that?
That was from Bart Olson.
Yeah, I think if we had something from that committee.
Yeah, that's what, well,
Great. And then,
yeah, okay, I got you.
so, and then the other one was Memorial Hospital Board of Trustees. I don't know if that's done anything recently, but
Well, I haven't been even notified of a meeting,
let's talk after and.
because
have-
I wondered if I was taken off that board. I asked to be on that board, but I don't know if I'm still on it or not. Am I on it?
I don't think.
Michelle?
So Chairman and Commissioners, that was one of the things that we were left with, Eric, was to try and decide if we filled the board completely because we didn't have enough members. And when the sale of the hospital happened, the whole change never got addressed or handled. So the Board of Trustees, the Memorial Hospital Board of Trustees, they have been coming in during the foundation when they give their updates. So that's where we have sat and been sitting the last 2 years with it. So you've not been removed from it. It's just you were sitting as a commissioner when Collective Health came in and did their update. And then we had 2 or 3 members from the Memorial Hospital Board of Trustees in the audience. So, and then when I had a meeting with Heather last week when I came back from vacation, it's on her radar that we gotta figure out
Mr.
how
Chairman.
that board is supposed to be handled.
Commissioner Milne?
We need to get that board up and established again, running, potentially not just meet during the foundation or the collective's presentation. I believe the board could be utilized to address some of the concerns that Commissioner Laird has, and can actually be the watchdog to make sure that the hospital or whoever owns the hospital at the time, but they can watch and make sure those agreed upon actions be held. So I'd encourage us to, or the board or whoever is running the board at this point, to start scheduling up meetings and having meetings with the hospital and utilize that as a tool to make sure those obligations are met.
But what I would add to your question, your answer to your question, Mr. Nicolason, is that I have met with, I'm trying to think of the number, 7 or 8 physicians. They're extremely concerned, one who is in a top level of administration, and others. And their concerns are,
Yeah, I have concerns. I think a lot of us have been hearing a lot about those concerns in the healthcare in this county. And so I agree with Commissioner Milne. We need to get that up and running. And I think that there's some things that we can do that not only will help provide assurances of compliance, Banner's compliance with that contract or the contracts, but also maybe establish a path forward in a positive direction. So we will talk more, I'm sure, in the weeks to come.
I wish too, Mr. Chairman, we'd get the contract back online that you took down at the request of the CEO, because his requests really weren't valid, but I don't care whether we have the page on there that sees what cars they bought. But there are doctors who would like to see that and have asked me when that will be back up there, and I said I didn't know.
Commissioner North?
So I would just request that it be put back up.
Noted.
Just got out of a regional water board, and one of the things that was brought up today is the dissolution of Wardwell Water District. Bar none has taken over that. They have actually gotten down to it's actually gone extremely fast, a lot faster than anybody anticipated. And they're down to the last 2 stages of that, which is publication of notice of elections. And that will occur within 90 to 120 days. Currently, they have that time frame set for August 8th through September 7th of this year. That'll be the final stage in that. For the biggest changes, bar none is going to be taking over the operation. For the most part, the county will probably be stepping up and doing the inspections for those areas outside of the municipality, within the municipalities, for anything that's going in, doing the permit and the inspections of those, but everything else will be bar none. There are some I's that need to be dotted and T's that needs to be crossed still, but other than that, that's the main thing. So don't really have a whole lot else to add at this point.
So the only things I'm going to hit are board-wise, CNFR. They blew it out of the water, sold out Saturday night, and they were, before even alcohol sales, anything else, they were already 20,000 ahead of last year, which was a record year. So new records being set. I think that future discussions I'd like to see us have, and just brought this up to Commissioner Nicolason before, is I'd like to that when we talk about the master plan on the mountain, the trail ends on Castle Mountain Road. It gets up to a point that it's just a turnaround there, and I'd like to see if we can't work with landowners up there and possibly get that thing finished up and connected up to Garden Creek at some point in time, because that ties into the bridle trail and everything else we got going on up there. So I'd like to look at that for a future discussion. And then I'd also like to have future discussions on some of the things out at the lake. We've talked about it in a meeting, Mr. Brown and myself and Commissioner North, but the lottery system out there, I think, is an unneeded system itself. People are finding loopholes and ways to get around that, and it just absolutely makes no sense why it's even in place, because the general public really don't even have an opportunity to purchase property out there, and we're also handed a letter with 5 names on it and telling the homeowners that's who they get to sell their properties to. So I'm going to kind of work through that and bring it back to the commission so that we can look at the best way to approach on that thing itself. But there's a few things out there I think that need a little bit of work, and so bring those forward on future agenda items. Other than that, does anybody have anything that? Go ahead.
I've got some stuff now. I just had to get my thoughts in order.
Sure. I was just gonna. I'll just.
You're finishing up.
Well, I was finishing up. Does anybody have future agenda items? Because I'd like to keep this thing still rolling forward. So if you have ideas that you want, make sure that Michelle gets them so that we can get them on here. And whether we have a date that we plug it in now, or we just have suggested items like I just said, the lake stuff, I still want to get it on this list so that it's there and we don't forget about it and we come back and revisit.
I have a thing I'd like you to put on.
So when you have something to put on, just make sure that Michelle gets it.
Courthouse security at the Townsend.
Maybe they'll get us, committee will get us a letter, and that'd be a great time to have that. Mr. Chairman, Michelle, can you put one of those forms on the corner of our desks so that if we're just in there for 5 minutes, and it might remind us to actually use this form,
Yep.
which I think is a good idea. But, and it's just part of the packet, I blow by it pretty quick, so I think that'd be good.
Commissioner Mill.
Could I add to that as far as, can you send that, just the blank document out, so that as I think of something, I can throw it on there and then email it to you?
Just once.
Yeah, just once, just the template. All right, so real quick, with Advanced Casper, part of that is the Fly Casper initiative. We had that, and part of what they're doing is also working with CC, Casper College, for the aviation program. We just saw the runway run just recently, and that went really well, and that's for scholarships for the aviation students. The Scottsdale Mint has plans and is going to be operating a free trade part within the free trade zone in the county, and administering their own storage system there. That's big part of their business plan. Big part of having the free trade zone is actually having a customs agent here. We've got to make sure our legislators understand Casper is an international airport. It's the only one. We have a part-time custom agent. Customs does not like having a part-time custom agent, and we've got to keep him. It's just absolutely vital, otherwise we lose the free trade zone. Advanced Casper is also starting a new initiative where they're going to offer the services to administer the free trade zone for companies that want to store items here in in Natrona County. So that'll hopefully scare up some more business coming into Natrona County. Jumping gears a little bit, Fair Board, the new barns are up. For the most part, even with all the water coming in, they almost stayed dry up until the very end of it. Tom was pumping water constantly with that storm that came through. We do have a new contract with a new carnival provider, so we should see a better carnival, more user-friendly, hopefully, with tickets and tokens and whatnot. And then he's got some really good stock scheduled, so the rodeo should be pretty outstanding. It's not really, it kind of is with the security, county security and safety and whatnot. There was a continuity of work exercise. Most of the offices and departments attended it, and it was facilitated by EMA. Had a lot of good discussion with the tabletop exercise, which is actually a flood. And then, shortly after we had that exercise, we had a flood. Small one compared to what our exercise, but it was a good example of why we needed continuity. The only problem that I saw with it, and I know we have a lot of oars in the water and we don't have a whole lot of time sometimes, but with the continuity of business planning and everything, I was kind of in on it from the inception and throughout a little bit. The flip charts were my thing. So I had a pretty good handle of the whole thing already. I'd really encourage any of y'all as commissioners to attend one of these as well next time we have it. That way you can see where the other departments, what the county as a whole is trying to plan for and work with the continuity. So that was it. Any questions?
Yeah, I want to ask a question and add something to it. As far as the customs agents go out there, and I know that Dale's been out there forever, and who knows how long he'll be there, but I'd be interested in seeing if, so customs used to have a cross-training course to where law enforcement officers were cross-trained to be customs officials. So if we have, how many officers do we have out there, or fire personnel that we have, they're there 24 hours a day. And if you can cross-train them, then you don't have to pay for that part-time position, and you always have a customs agent on the ground.
That's a really good idea.
At all times, so.
Mr. Chairman, we have an airport board meeting tomorrow, and I can raise that with the airport manager, at least to get them kind of thinking about it. They may have, but that's good.
I'm not 100% positive it's still in place, but I know from experience, because I was cross-trained to do that very thing. So if it's still in place, that just seems like a no-brainer. Yeah, so. And then in reference to the declaration we did last week, I did talk to Lynn Budd this morning in reference to the flood that we had going on, or our flooding event that took place here. We basically went over dollar figures. It is actually a very high threshold for federal funds to come in to help out on any flooding event that took place. The SBA, it has a lower threshold, but there's more hoops to cross through there. So in doing what we did was the right thing to do. If something is really going to come of it, it's yet to be seen, but there are a lot of people that are taking advantage of that Orion, same program you guys use for your tabletop, that Orion website. There's people that are getting in there and uploading pictures and damage that happened to their property and whatnot. So I would just encourage people that have suffered damage to make sure they get in there, because the more that's reported and the more that we can show that's happened, the better it'll be. So, okay, well, that'll take care of that around the table. So we will jump forward with Michael Brown, Natrona County Parks Director, and we are discussing the Casper Mountain Trails Center Summer Trail Master Plan.
underway. I know we're kind of at the final point of hopefully getting this master plan adopted so that it can be implemented and we can start following it and trying to improve some of our summer trails up there. This is mostly oriented to the biking community, but it will also improve hiking as well in the area. I guess I'm here mostly to answer any questions that the commission may have before this is presented, I believe this evening. I will tell you that all the email comments that I have from the posting on our website have been positive. I have not received any negative comments. The only non-positive comments kind of come from staff, but I think they're just concerned about additional maintenance and whatnot. Speaking with Central Wyoming Trail Alliance, I believe we could probably work on an MOU with them and they can do a lot of the, annual maintenance that might be done on the trails and support our staff in doing so. So with that, I guess I'd be open to questions on this plan or concerns about it.
Anybody have any questions? Commissioner North?
Michael, thank you for coming in and presenting this. I guess the biggest question right now is, where are we at as far as looking at a grant writer or funding to do some of these trails that we were looking at on here? Because I know the cost is pretty substantial.
So I met with a potential grant writer. I have some concerns about their cost. I don't know if they're still available. That was probably 6 weeks ago that they provided their information and cost on it. As for this is one of the projects that I'm working on, preparing the Wyoming Outdoor Rec pre-application for their grant funding, and I still yet to find out when they need to have that. I believe it's in August. So I've drafted a few things to get that started. And so that's kind of where it's at. The funding is in a 3-phased approach. When I received this final draft, they actually had dates tied to the phases, and I had them take that out due to the unknowns on funding. As I don't want to have a master plan that says we have to have this done by 2023 or 2024. And I believe this is built in basically 3 categories of construction. There's the volunteer level that we could probably get going fairly soon with Central Wyoming Trail Alliance. There's the next level that would be county staff doing some of the work. And then the 3rd level is basically you need to have a professional trail builder to construct it properly, or at least oversee what the volunteers may be able to do, what our staff may be able to do. So it's kind of broken down in that aspect. There's some technical writing, things for gravity trails, there's berms and corners, and there's roller tables. And some of that, when we get to that point, I'd like to know what the county liability is for constructing things like that. So before I hired on, my understanding is some volunteers built some jumps on some of the trails, and they were removed by the county. For one, they weren't discussed with the county, and then there was concerns about safety. So that's something we definitely need to discuss before we build jumps or what might be perceived as jumps and things of that sort.
Michael, we have used a grant writer that assists with the county, and we still have a contract, I believe, don't we, Jim? Jim, we still have a contract with the grant Ashley, don't we? Or do we? Is it Ashley?
You're talking about sustained strategies.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that may be,
That's still active. I worked with her on the
yeah,
trailhead kiosks.
yeah,
that, Brooke was having me pursue.
yeah, that may be, that may be one way we can do it and reduce the cost and still look at some other options out there and find out just exactly what is available. And you are correct, there was a illegal jump that was built right on the trail at one time, and that was removed because it wasn't authorized, so.
And then another economic way to implement some of this is by utilizing the Land Conservation Corps. They're the same group that we'll have at the Bridle Trail in early August to help us do repairs and improvements there along the trail. At this point in time, they cost $15,000 for an 8-day hitch, what they call it, 8 days on the ground with eight young vibrant people that want to work hard with hand tools on trails, and they can do a lot of work. So we could look at getting them on for 24 or 25, depending on where we're at in the implementation of this master plan.
Michael, the Phase 1 total capital need is $92,500 on page 27. Do you have any of that or those items either completed or in fiscal year '24's budget for your parks?
Not specifically, however, as we spoke earlier about the RMP implementation funds, depending on which projects go where, some of that can be utilized for the Phase 1 to get that started, especially the Central Wyoming Trail lines, the redevelopment zone. That could definitely come out of that line item in my budget.
Michael, are these supposed to be, I realize each of the different phases are independent to some degree, but that being said, do they have to go in order, or are they linked, in a sequence that you got to do A before B before C?
No, I don't believe so. The consultant, Keelan, Scott Lindbergh, he does trail design and construction all over the country. And the way I see this is, if there's something that becomes a higher priority, we could do that. For example, there's a more technical riding over at the Biathlon Club and at Murray Mountain Park. That's kind of by itself, where the campground loop and those trails that interconnect the campground and tie into our current trails over by the Casper Mountain Trail Center. I think that could be done on its own. There's a aggregate trail at Bear Trap Campground. I don't want to say it's ADA compliant, but it's pretty close. It would be able to be utilized for folks that may need, a flatter, harder packed trail. That could be done on its own as well. the work in the North 40, that's kind of a realignment of existing trails and closures and trails, so I mean, really all of this could be piecemeal out into separate sections if it needed to be. I mean, there might be a few connections that we would want to make to make everything tie in together.
But we could actually go through and pick and choose a few trails out of each one if that's what we, to get things started, if that's,
Yes.
I guess that's what I was asking
Yes.
or getting at eventually, so, okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Mill?
Oh, Michael, the proposed trail and everything, they're all across public property or established trails, or?
Yes, I believe everything that was developed in this, on page, would that be? Page 2. Hold on, let me find it. Page 5, the trail system design, it looks like this. All of that is on the county. The only thing that does not fall on county or city of Casper property that we manage at least, it would be up in the very north section, and those are existing trails that I believe are on the state of Wyoming,
Okay,
up in the white property, so.
so we don't have to worry about easements, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera?
Correct.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I am very sorry to interrupt. I'm getting text messages from the Council for Rolling Hills at the Industrial Siting Commission. Everybody's together except for Natrona County. We logged off the meeting because we had provided our testimony. As you know, there was an MOU, and an amended MOU. Now Evansville is asking for $150,000 over what they asked for, and potentially Mills may be asking for more. I don't know what the figure is. And I guess they're wanting to know if Natrona County is going to have an objection to what is requested by potentially the other two parties to that. And I'm sorry to interrupt, drop that on you like that.
Do we know what the nature of the increased requests are?
I have no idea.
Or the explanation of why they're at the 12th hour?
I have no idea. Mr. Silva indicates that most everybody appears to be on the same page and okay with it, but I don't know any of the details. I apologize.
Can we take a no position?
I will ask.
Because,
Supportive of the MOU, but no position on the increases.
yeah,
Okay.
for lack of information and blah, blah, blah.
Thank you.
Like that.
Is there a question, you're waiting for my answer?
Yeah, and then another question behind that.
Please repeat the question.
I resemble
He was
that.
asking about access.
Oh, you were-
Yeah, access and easements, so no easements are
So,
required,
no, it's all
everything's,
on, what's considered public property.
okay.
And, the stuff in the McMurray Mountain Park or the Biathlon Club area, that is on the city of Casper. There's been no opposition from the Biathlon Club that they've been in support of this plan. So I think they would like to see that. That's the more advanced technical downhill section of the road there.
And city doesn't have any problems with the lease for us doing this?
No, I don't believe so.
Okay. And then behind that, does this take into account any, or was it consulted, the current mountain land use plan?
I'm unsure of that.
Okay.
The one that was recently adopted,
Right.
I think it did take it into account. I would have to double check with Chrissy. I'm trying to recall what.
Yeah, I just didn't,
How this affected it. I don't think this affected.
I don't think it did. I didn't see any reference to it within the document, so I was just kind of curious.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Nicolason?
Thank you, just briefly. I think I did this. I think the chairman saw this first.
Well,
Would you like to go first, Mr. Vice Chairman?
I can. Mine's a short question. The only thing I was going to ask is, are we on some of these trails, because we have some that are limited right now, some of our trail systems are limited to use. Are we going to have some of these identified specifically for certain type of use, like mountain bikes, and not necessarily a hiking trail, or for safety reasons or whatever else? Or is that part of the plan?
Yes, and I'll go back to the advanced technical downhill considerations, and, this is just an overall plan. It doesn't have specific details, but there will be signing, and those downhill trails will be signed as one way, only because you don't want somebody walking up that trail while people are trying to ride the gravity. I think, I'm trying to recall where that's located in there. I believe it talks about signage and whatnot. I'm not sure where that's listed. Part of this overall plan is to, for a better term, segregate different levels of riders.
Well, I guess that's basically what I was asking, is not just the rider's experience, but also to make sure that we don't have hikers going down the trail, on something where they've got a potential
Yeah,
safety
so
hazard with bikes coming down.
I believe the only area would be over there in the Murray Mountain Park on the downhill. That's an area of concern to have hikers on those trails.
Okay.
I think each,
Everything else is kind of like what we have now, mixed use. And we can, the North 40 might be another area that we can delineate as mountain bikes versus hikers on some of those trails, because there's a little bit of downhill, there's some tight corners and whatnot to mitigate any potential collisions.
Commissioner, north each one of these, like Bear Trap Meadow at the bottom, says intended experience, improved surface experience to allow wheeled mobility devices. And then if you look at Pinball, that's mountain bike optimized one-way trails. So they're at the intended experience level is at the bottom of each one of the areas.
Right, I just want to make sure that we specifically identified them as such, not just on here.
Through
but-
signage.
Yeah, for signage and stuff like that, so that people knew that there were areas that were specifically made for that and not just for hiking.
Thank you, Chairman. I went right past that at the top of each page, looking for something else.
Commissioner Nicolason.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Michael, as you know, we're right on the cusp of investing a significant amount of money for the lodge on these lands that are deeded to the city of Casper. In addition, I'm looking at potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars of improvements of county money into these lands which are deeded to the city of Casper, that are the trails that are just to the, north and east of this lodge we're planning on building. So I think this is a good time for us as a group to figure out the best way to move those discussions with the city forward on what as I understand is not if, but when the transfer of the real estate will go to the county. So I just want to make sure that's on our collective radar sooner rather than later.
Yes, Commissioner Nicolason, I've heard that in the past they've tried to do that transfer, and for some reason it falls through, but I think that's an important thing that the county as a whole should pursue for sure. so that we can actually own those properties that we have so much invested in.
We got other questions? Okay,
All right, thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are you familiar with Notches Road? Are you familiar with Notches Road? Where is it? It must be in pretty bad shape. No gravel at all. I'm waiting for you, Mr. Chairman.
Well, Danielle's our next one, but she's still got about 5 minutes, so stand down until she gets here.
Does Christie want to come down? Keep it rolling?
Mr. Chairman, if I may, just briefly.
Good.
I've reviewed now the City of Casper's Statement of Investment Policy adopted and updated last September. And then also a request for proposal for investment advisory services that they put out February 4th of last year, and proposals basically 14 days later were due. I think there's a lot here that we can work from, and so I'm going to get my marked up copies to the rest of you, and I don't believe we've adopted a investment policy for the county at this point. Is anybody aware of one? So I've asked our treasurer and Nick and our assistant to confirm that, but this would be, I think, a top priority for the county for moving forward on the investment of the hospital funds.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, did you guys receive this, this has to do with this issue, from Nick today on, looks like a little chink in the armor here with respect to that investment. Our accountants were consulted, as I asked him, they said they didn't do this, but they did note that it would have been helpful if Wildstar had provided the unrealized loss on the investment on the monthly statements the county receives. This information is received at the end of each fiscal year. Apparently, we didn't get that. That could be a big deal. One way or another.
Okay, we'll move on to Danielle, dealing with volunteers and equipment.
Hello, Mr. Chair.
Hello.
So we had a couple of requests, one from a previous commissioner and then one from a current commissioner, Commissioner North, to be able to volunteer their time to help out with operating equipment and helping it with certain areas of the county that need upkeep. So we have done this in the past. I do have a liability waiver and release that was done through county legal. We'll need to have legal look at it again. It does not discuss operating equipment. It was more set up for light duty parks work and do-it-yourself tree cutting and that sort of thing for the cleanup for Ponderosa Park on the mountain. So we'll probably need to get it updated. However, that's a minimal piece. I did check with Warm, our liability insurance, and as long as the person signs the release, they would be covered under our insurance as a volunteer. We would have to list them as a volunteer, and they would be covered under our insurance. The only thing they would not be covered under is workers' compensation in case they got hurt, but that's what the release would cover. So we need approval for current commissioner and a previous commissioner to be able to run equipment.
Who's the previous commissioner?
Rob Henry.
Mr. Chairman.
Danielle, maybe the letter in the packet from you, or the memo in the packet from you, was put together before the conversation with Warm, but I'm trying to recall what the reservations were on this. It seemed like it was more than just liability.
So, no, this, I put the letter together after I spoke with Warren. I think the reservations are, would we do this for anybody, to allow them, anybody else in the public, to allow them to operate equipment?
Danielle, I think that when we do something like this, that we need to do it at a much broader base. And what I say by that is because when I wasn't working as a commissioner, I actually ran equipment that was owned by the county. And that was part of the cleanup up there at Ponderosa Park. I know for a fact that we've got people that are operating the equipment throughout the county now that are not employees under different terms. So I think this is something that if we move this way, we need to make sure that it covers anybody that we want to allow to utilize the equipment. That being said, those individuals need to be checked out by whoever is responsible for that equipment. That person has to be the one that is designated and in charge of that at all times and responsible for it at the end. So I think that's something that we need to make sure that this is not something that's taking away from the county's responsibility. It's strictly assisting the county on a time-to-time basis.
So, Mr. Chair, I think I'm under the impression after speaking with Michael Brown and Mike Habler that there was nobody else in the county that is operating equipment from Road and Bridge. So I don't know if it's equipment, which equipment you're referring to, Commissioner North, but equipment such as blades, dozers, heavy equipment. I was told that nobody else is operating it besides employees.
They told me something different. So I've heard different things. So, but this could actually be vehicles, driving vehicles, county-owned vehicles. This could be several things, not just the equipment. That's what I'm saying. We need to make sure, if WARM covers them and they sign that liability so that they're not covered, that if WARM says that they're covered, then we just need to make sure that that's something that we look at.
My comment would be, that would be not a good move. I just think, I always have to remember what I was told as a child: don't ever loan your car to anybody. And I don't think you can loan taxpayer equipment out to people that want to run it, because there's all kinds of liability involved there that, and I haven't seen this release she's talking about, but I don't think it's a good policy. And I would doubt if Mike Hager would recommend it even. But I would sure want to know from those guys, because I know they left a piece of equipment out on one of the roads and somebody decided to operate it and they ran it off into the ditch. You guys probably remember that, and then they had to go out with big trucks to get it back on the road and haul it out of there, and it wasn't usable for a while. So to have people who don't really have a big stake in the game, I would be against them doing that myself. I just don't think it's a good legal move.
I personally see us opening up Pandora's box. We talked about this during all the storms and the amount of people calling, and if we go in and help somebody, get themselves unstuck, or we go and repair a pothole, then where does that go? Somebody else wants it done. So now if we go and loan out equipment in one part of the county and somebody wants it in the other part of the county, then what do we do? Because you're not going to have enough to go around. I don't think it's a good idea, personally myself, to put volunteers in there. We have employees to do that, but I'm not really in favor of this.
No, for right now, I think we got bigger things to worry about right now than this. Maybe circle back. I agree with Dave that we need to look at the policy a little bit further, more generalized. I know we fall under WARM or the insurance when we operate vehicles. Is everybody doing the defensive driving? We need to, if we want to open it up or do whatever, then we need to do the follow-up as well, work. And we need that training, we need the certification, we need whatever for those operators. So we're not going to turn over a Class A vehicle to somebody operating a Class C driver's license. We shouldn't expect anything else with the other stuff too. So I think we need to take a broader look at it, but approach it at a little bit different time than now. We've got other things to concern ourselves with. I don't think how this is all put together right now meets this, cuts the mustard if you were. But, like I said, we wouldn't be putting CDL drivers in Class 8 trucks. We need that training, that certification, that authorization, experience.
I just want to piggyback on the back of that too, Jim, is that the training too, everybody can sit here and say, oh, yeah, we'll check off, make sure they can do it, and we'll make sure the training in place, but you and I have talked about it as far as the required training that comes along with these jobs and these appointments, and we have people that can't even get online and finish a course online. So, I have more reservations there because we can't even do a simple half-hour course, an hour course online, so.
Mr. Chairman, I want to add to this. My biggest reservation would be, I think that if you were going to do it, which I hope we don't, for a lot of other political reasons, I don't think ex-commissioners and current commissioners should be operating the equipment in that vein. Now, what I'm saying is that anybody who would operate the equipment, if this commission decided to vote that way, I think the people operating it have to have a major league insurance policy insuring the county for any negligence that they may commit while on that equipment that may not be covered under the immunity statutes of the state of Wyoming, because that is a really big deal. So I just think it has too many pitfalls to even consider it myself.
Commissioner Nicholas.
Mr. Chairman, I share some of the concerns. I would point out that Commissioner Hendry has been in the road construction business and has a fleet of motor graders, does this professionally for oil companies, and is very qualified. Now, I also remind us that Mr. Hagler has had a really difficult time hiring qualified operators, and that basically trying to keep up with the oil patch in this area in particular is very challenging. So I'm not for this at this point, and I certainly don't want to open up a can of worms. I think the chairman's exactly right that in my mind, I have this fear that every department head and an elected official will start having their own volunteers, maybe volunteers to go out and do property inspections, because we only let the assessor have 2 new people and she wanted 4. And I mean, we're not serious about that, but I think that it could become unmanageable for legal and HR and us, and I think we'd be very careful. And I think that maybe we consider it again in very narrow circumstances as we get closer to winter, so we have a backup plan, for an operator to operate out on the far west side of the county or the far east side of the county, if necessary, to save the day a little bit. But anyway, yeah, I share a lot of those concerns.
I also think that probably Dave North knows how to handle his equipment as well, and I do agree about Mr. Henry. My problem with it is purely legal and the legal involvements that brilliant lawyers can put together when something bad goes wrong. I just don't want to have to deal with that legally.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I think the intentions are good. They're going to volunteer their time to do this, but I agree, it's the legal that comes along with it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we will move on to visit Casper, Glenn Haas, Vernon Lovejoy, and this is for the National Heritage Area. Afternoon. Good seeing you.
And we want to keep this brief. We hope you will challenge us with some questions. Be great. I assume you got the letter from Carbon County, some months ago, and we made a presentation down there several times, and they are fully supportive of the efforts to develop a feasibility study. Feasibility study is not a decision document. There is nothing more than an assessment of the opportunity to develop a national heritage area for carbon and Natrona County. If you go through the feasibility study, then you get the chance to make a permanent decision on whether or not you support more tourism on carbon and Natrona County. The goal of the feasibility study is to develop an opportunity that you might realize that will be a national audience. One thing with carbon and Natrona County listing is the ability to attract an international or national audience. You're not going to have a park, you're not going to have a national recreation area, you're not going to have a national wildlife refuge that will attract these kinds of opportunities. We think that, thank you. We think from preliminary analysis that there's no question about it that Carbon and Natrona County are an ideal location for a national heritage area. And the feasibility study will, we hope, at least make that assessment is correct. This is not just a local thing, and it didn't just happen a few months ago. I actually started working on this going on 8 years ago. And I lived in Rollins, by the way, for 12 years. And I suffered through 2 boom and busts there. And I decided there had to be something else in addition to agriculture and in addition to minerals. And the only option, obviously, was some form of tourism had to happen. And it became real apparent that these 2 counties have an enormous heritage of pioneers and early 20th century activities going on. It works well. So, first of all, I'd like to tell you that we'll need a point of contact if this happens, if you vote for it, and we hope you will make some sort of temporary recommendation today, because we're kind of getting up against the gun with Carbon County as well as our own work schedules. And What Dr. Haas and I have agreed to do is do the feasibility study at no charge. And the only thing that we request is you help us with our actual cost, like gasoline. This is my 5th trip to Casper this year, working on this thing. So it's not just like I've been up here a couple times. And it kind of gets to be expensive. Other costs would be printing and other miscellaneous things like hotel rooms. Visit Casper, when we came up a couple weeks ago, Visit Casper actually sponsored us. That all cuts back on the amount of money that we need. The only thing we're asking you is to just provide our actual cost. Some of those things can be donated and actually cut down on that cost too, such as I mentioned, printing, comp rooms, things like that. We're going to need a point of contact with probably one of the commissioners, and yeah, I'll get to that. And Dave, Commissioner North, if you will, has been involved with us, and we appreciate your efforts, by the way, and you've helped us a lot. And also, as Tyler Doherty has been quite essential in this effort. He's a go-getter, and we really like him. The question is, does he or someone else have staff? And what we would like to tell you is we don't need a full-time person. We probably would need somebody work maybe a half a day every couple of weeks, so we don't expect, drag them away from their normal duties. But this is an important thing, because I think if it happens, you will see an enormous amount of tourism, permanent tourism, come to Carbon and Natrona County over the years, because we'll be able to advertise this as a national audience. And that's what you don't have now, is a national audience. You have groups and bits of people advertising this and advertising that. But we would do it on a national scale. We also, the feasibility study would also require us to, excuse me, I'm suffering from allergy. We also have a person that's going to do it free, a website for us so we can collect information and recommendations over the internet. And let's see, our cost. It's always an important thing. We have supplied a budget. A recommended budget was about $15,000. That was only for Dr. Haas and I's cost. Come in here, Glenn, I'm suffering here a minute.
Yeah, no, we had, Carbon County has agreed to pay $750. We're asking, all right, $750?
$7,500.
$7,500 to cover our real and actual cost on a invoice basis and so on and so forth. Let me continue.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let me introduce myself. My name's Glenn Hawes. This is really Vernon's project. He and I go back about 25 years.
Thank you.
He's been a resident of Wyoming, smitten with this area, smitten with the heritage assets. When he started talking about a national heritage area, I said, well, I could help you, because I live in a national heritage area and went through 20 years of concerns about what's that heritage area going to do and so on and so forth. Also in Fort Collins, there's a second national heritage area, the Cache-Laputer Heritage Area. So I'm kind of Vernon's staff person, unpaid volunteer staff person, you might say. And I just wanted to hit a few points that might be concerning. The notion of a national heritage area is to attract heritage tourists. Okay? Heritage tourists tend to be older. They tend to be higher income. They tend to be looking for a more learning experience, to enjoy the heritage assets that you have. They tend to stay longer. They tend to stay in hotels. They're not your typical outdoor recreationists. They're not high-risk people. They're not the backpackers. They're not the four-wheel drive folks, so on and so forth. So we're trying, a national heritage area would attract that kind of clientele. You ask yourself why. I'm going down this list, just 5 of these little bullets of the packet that we provided. Why create a Pathways National Heritage Area? Vernon already said it, national recognition. I was struck when we left Fort Collins this morning that 500 miles away, there's a big Yellowstone National Park's brown sign right inside the Wyoming border. Why can't there be a Pathways National Heritage sign at that distance? Why can't you, and we believe you can, intercept these people whose mindset might be on the northwest corner of the state and bring them here for a few days, for a few dollars, for a few nights? So having a National Heritage Area would certainly increase tourism, stimulate economic growth. And I hold before you a study that was done on the Cache-la-Poudre National Heritage Area. It was done in 2017. They did an economic impact of the Cache-la-Poudre. It's a linear national heritage area out to Greeley. $81 million, gentlemen, $81 million a year. You know, this is obviously very significant. So that money could obviously influence local state taxes, programs that could help protect some of your heritage sites that in terms of management and signage and so on. And then we believe a National Heritage Area would attract financial resources. For someone to say that they have private landowner, public landowner, the county, the city, the state, that they are operating a heritage asset within the National Heritage Area could attract, add credibility, and possibly increase the probability of getting monies from grants, donations, and so forth. Big concern. It's number 4 here, is what's the effect of a National Heritage Area on private land? The effect is none. A National Heritage Area has no authority to do anything to your public land or private land. They can't alter it, they don't influence signage, they don't influence sales, they don't need to be part of this program if they don't wish to. So if you go down that list, and that's a list that's already codified in law, and if you go forward with this, we would recommend in any kind of legislation, you would recodify this for this particular National Heritage Area. So anyway, I'm not going to read all those for the sake of time. You say, how's this thing come about? Where's the government fit into it? President Reagan formalized this in 1984. 62 heritage areas are in existence today. Congress gave the responsibility for the program to the National Park Service. The National Park Service has no land, facilities, staff, nothing to do with the Natural Heritage Area except for 2 things. They screened the feasibility study that Vernon was alluding to. So at the end of what we're proposing is a 6-month process, we would hand you a 90% done complete feasibility study. You would decide what to do with it, trash it, move it forward with your Wyoming delegation into the congressional roller coaster. The National Park Service would look at the feasibility study, see if it meets their 10 criteria. Park Services asked National Heritage Areas, those of us who put together the feasibility study, to address 10 criteria. Did we adequately do that is really their judgment. If we pass that loop, you folks would pass or advance a piece of legislation. After that legislation's passed, probably about 2 years down the line, the first 3 years, you can get $150,000. This is all on the website, Park Service legislation. You can get $150,000 a year to develop a management plan. If you do it faster, fine. I don't see why it would take 3 years to develop a management plan. It's kind of crazy. After that, each National Heritage Area gets $300,000 to $500,000 of operating capital for you to do and use it as you wish.
Every year.
Every year. So a $7,500 investment could turn into something of a sizable return. You asked the question, who manages this thing? Who's going to do this? In the case of the South Park Heritage Area where I have a house, it's the City Parks and Recreation Department that actually is the coordinating entity for the National Heritage Area. In the case of the Cash Laputa, they actually formed a 501c3 nonprofit board to run the organization. So they're managed by everything's local. There's nothing outside of your area. So might Visit Casper be the managing entity? Sure. Might the Natrona County Parks Department? That would be your decision. There would be options for existing entities to be the manager, to receive that money, to help coordinate the heritage sites and entities around this geographic space. Or you could set up a separate nonprofit and to do that. So you have flexibility. That's not a decision that would need to be decided early, soon. So.
Let me say something.
Yeah.
The board, the city, or whomever you would choose to do this is not a manager of anything. They are more of an administrative staff. They would like help you with the media. They would keep records. They do all those sorts of things, but they have no authority whatsoever to manage any place, private or public, associated with the National Heritage Area. Because all sites are managed by the people who are doing it now. There's no influence whatsoever from anybody, give them any direction whatsoever. So a person that's running, let's just say, a historical ranch, and they're inviting customers out there. It's up to them to decide what type of facilities and services they want to provide. Nobody is going to come in and tell them, you're not meeting this standard, you're not meeting that standard. So each person is a manager of site.
Yeah, I would say you might ask the question, well, what is it that this thing does? It really promotes on both the national and frankly the international. If you look at Fort Casper, they have a bulletin board, a map of all their international visitors. So international folks have their eyes on you. This would provide a better focus, a better way for people to gather information. The main task, I believe, of this coordinating entity would be to maintain an app called the Pathways National Heritage Area app that would have all of your, on the back side here, there's all these blue sites. You probably have 100 to 150 heritage sites in your 2 counties that people go to or would like to see. Some of them are probably not in shape, so they would not be included in this. But in an app, so as people drive from Nebraska or Washington, they could find out and decide where do they want to go in this National Heritage Area. Here's the Abraham Lincoln, you can't see it, birthplace. You can go onto this site for the National Park Service and find out things to do, self-guided tours, visitor centers, amenities, blah, blah, blah. Lodges, hotels, restaurants, gas stations could all be put in here just for your National Heritage Area. Remember, you're not a National Park Service unit, so you would not be part of what I'm holding up in my hand right now. We'd have to create an app. This is not hard. It's been done. But that would be a major task of this coordinating entity, this staff person that might be part of the program down the line, their responsibility to maintain. So again, we're not talking about building buildings or buying land. It's not a conservation land trust. We're talking about controlling information and helping these 150 entities. I was down at when I stopped at the visitor center down outside of Cheyenne, I must have picked up 30 brochures for locations in this general vicinity. Who wants 30 brochures in their car? This is crazy. We need to get out of the brochure business let's wrap all your 125 heritage sites into an organized assemblage called the National Heritage Area, build an app, and sit back and see how things go.
One thing I'd like to add is that the infrastructure and the places are already here. They already exist. You don't have to worry about it. People, that they're already here, but what's happening is you're not getting the national audience, and that's what's important. So you will have people that want to join the, I'm collaborative, I'll use that because I don't know a better word for it. But people who want to be a part of the National Heritage Area can join and be a part, and they're part of the advertisement campaign. And if they don't want to be part, they can get out same day. So entities can come in and get off anytime they want. The only difference was they would just be removed from the app if they chose not to be there. If they want to be there, then we put them on the app. But you have, everything already exists, especially here in Natrona County. The fact is you're overrun with heritage sites, important heritage sites, national sites. And we propose that if you do this National Heritage Area, you'll get a national audience, which is what you don't have now.
So again, I think what we're asking you, gentlemen, is we're willing to do 90% of the work of the feasibility study. We hand it over to you January 1st. That's our target. I've set aside a July 1 to January 1 part of my life to help here. Simple as that. And we'd like to do that because we're interested in this area. We hand that over to you. It's your show from there. There's no obligations. There's no expectations. Again, the feasibility study is the key to go through the door to congressional legislation if you so choose down the line.
And by the way, the National Park, and one reason I mentioned we kind of need to know something pretty soon is because the National Park Service recommends when you start the feasibility study is the time to go to congressional delegation. Not in the middle of it, not the end of it. Is go ahead and at least let them know that you're going to do this. It does not have to go through state government, just so you know. Nothing has to go through, it's strictly between the county or the city or the counties and the cities to go to the congressional delegations. State not involved whatsoever. Now, they might offer a site that they want to include in the National Heritage Area, which is great. Independence Rock, we could just say as an example. Go ahead.
No, I think let's open it up for questions.
Yes, questions? We appreciate the
Sounds like a
challenge.
good idea to me.
Again, we're just saying, let's take a baby step. How about taking a baby step with us? Throw it out if you don't want to later on.
And, Aaron Casper, you have a lot of smaller museums, and they're going to experience a boom. Every place will experience a boom because they're going to be on the app. And people will go from one place to the next place that they're expected to go to. They're not out searching for new activities. There's plenty of activities here. If you start this trip and you visit all the sites, you're going to be out on the road a week around here. The whole key to tourism is keeping people overnight and spending money, and theoretically overnight, many overnights. We catch people on the way to Yellowstone and on the way back from Yellowstone.
Well,
So it's a huge potential success story for you, I would just tell you. I've been in the business for over 40 years, parks, recreation, tourism, and this is it appears to be quite a winner.
So you have, question number 7 says, can a property owner prevent the property from being included into an NHA boundary? And you said yes, of course they can. So my question to you is, how often do you see pushback from landowners or property owners from wanting to be involved in this?
So far, we've had 0.
Early in the process in the South Park one that I was involved in, you always have that question to ask at various open houses about how can I move in and out and so on and so forth. If a landowner wishes to not be a part of this ever, that could be written right into the legislation. To undo that becomes a problem. So there is that flexibility.
We had most of the people on the Carbon County Commission are ranchers or rancher associated. They all understood it and agreed that this was a good idea. As private property as an example.
Mr.
Commissioner
Chairman,
Milne.
I've got a couple questions for you real quick.
Sure.
Let's kick off with, right off, what Chairman Friel asked you is number 7. It says, yes, potentially. As a landowner that would be affected by this, potentially is kind of vague for me. I don't know, I mean, with the federal government doing what they're doing with different parks, and whatnot, it makes me a little nervous as a landowner. Makes me-
Wyoming's had some tough times with the National Park Service in the past. We're aware of that.
So.
And that's why I would think in any legislation, we make it tight. There's some of this legislation that's a paragraph long to designate a national heritage area. I would say have a 10-page piece of legislation which really locks in some of these issues and clarifies it. I know exactly where you're coming from on this.
And so on the front page of your proposal, you talk about conservation. I don't know if you know the conservation proposal that BLM's and Wyoming's having a little tiff about, but it's not a good word right now.
Okay. The BLM, Bureau of Reclamation, the National Park Service, Fish and Wildlife Service, you name it, they're not party to this whatsoever.
Well,
So it's all local control.
All local.
So can I follow up on that though, Jim? So you say they're not involved in it, but my follow-up question was how, let's say BLM in particular, are they agreeable to be a part of what you're proposing here? And the reason I bring that up is we have the Marton Ranch that is now owned by the BLM.
One, that would be part of our feasibility study is to talk to all the partners. But 2, we're not affecting them. A national heritage area has no effect on any public or private landowner, including feds, county, city.
no, but if it's conservation, and with the proposal of conservation leasing that the BLM's putting out there, it may be another bullet that they could use to bolster their argument for that freaking thing of conservation leasing and not
I honestly don't know what they're doing right now.
multi-land use. And so that's a concern for
Yeah,
me.
fair.
The other thing too is number 5 of your facts, restore and maintain property that's in the NHA. There's times when a homestead, cows are getting in the homestead, I'm going to tear it down.
Well, I mean, let me answer your question. This money that we talked about for planning and the maintenance of it afterwards, that money can go straight to the private landowner to help rehab facilities if he needed to, if he wanted to.
Okay.
Once it goes there, there's nobody overseeing it, overlooking over his shoulder and saying, well, you didn't do this, you didn't do that. That's not the case. It goes straight to that private, let's just say historic ranch. And he used that to update his property or whatever he happens to be doing to it. But after it goes there, there's nobody coming by and looking and saying, now, did you actually do this? That's not happening.
So there's no obligation to maintain whatever's in the program at that time. It can actually be removed if necessary.
Where I thought you were going, in the feasibility study, you're offered the opportunity to list sites that you might want to have some restoration work done. And Vernon keeps talking to me about Fort Steele along Interstate 80. It's an historic treasure, but it's not in good shape to receive a lot of people. So that might be listed. The Parco Hotel on I-80, fantastic resource, but it needs help. We could list those down as possible places that need some help in the future.
Right.
That could help then get grants and so on and so forth.
And you've had these discussions with City Casper and City of Mills already?
Travis Moore is Travis Moore is our point of contact on the county commissioners. And Leslie Jefferson from the tourism department, ED of the tourism department, is on our team.
In Rollins.
In Rollins.
We
Sorry.
did give this presentation to the city mayor and some other important people he had there. And he simply said at the end of the thing, said, this is a winner for us, and I like it.
Okay.
That was his.
Well, I was just curious if you talked to Mills and Casper, because like you said, this is your 5th trip up here and the first time I've seen this. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Well, we're on our June 2nd draft. I mean, we're just trying to get information out and bundle together so that we have something to
Okay.
present to you all.
Well, thank you.
And it's been updated since we sent this.
Okay.
Commissioner Nicholas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Dr. Haas and Mr. Lovejoy, for coming today. I have a number of questions on this. Your information that you provided does answer some of the initial questions I had. Let me tell you that we have, as a state and as a county, and our municipalities received substantial federal funding for various COVID and other related reasons over the past few years. And in every case, there have been strings attached. And I think that's just generally true. If you have the purse strings, then you can kind of dictate or influence the terms and conditions of how the money's going to be spent. And it's hard for me to imagine a scenario where they don't require some certifications on the use of this money. And even if there's no auditor coming out to my ranch to make sure funds were put into fixing up an old homestead, I'm probably going to be signing some sort of certification that says, yeah, I agree that this is, I'm going to spend it in a certain way. So I think you would have to look into that really carefully, because I think that's a huge issue, are the strings that are attached.
So we're already preparing to find the answer to that. Tomorrow, we're hopefully going to have a conference call with the National Park Service Coordinator, who is in Denver, that will answer that very question. So we will know, I should say we can find you a direct response tomorrow.
And I think that a concern I have it's not the rules that currently exist. It's the rules that another Congress or another administration, another director of the national parks might implement. We saw this on the BLM on something as little as easements, the easement policy from, being one direction under the Obama administration, then it was 180 degrees under the Trump administration, and now it's back 180 degrees. And these are just little easements across BLM land. So it's not necessarily the rules of the game as they currently exist, but it's those that are promulgated down the road. So I think that's an issue that you guys would have to look at really carefully. And then I wonder, is there a withdrawal? So once this is established, can the county, can an individual, can, a landowner, can they withdraw from the National Heritage Area?
Yes.
Without, without any sort of reimbursement or repayment of any funds they may have
Let's say,
received?
for instance, that you have a ranch, a historical ranch, and you get some money to do some work there. At some point in time later, you decide you don't want to be a part of that heritage area. You can just withdraw, and that's it. There's no repercussions.
It's interesting that it would be something that requires an act of Congress to authorize, right?
That's because it has the national title to it.
Okay.
That's why.
But then any old landowner at any time, if they woke up on the wrong side of the bed, could get out of the dealio.
We need to check into that.
We
I'll
need
give you
to-
credit for that one.
We need to make sure. One of the things on your feasibility study, if we were going to agree to this, is that I would feel really strongly that you have at least one public meeting here in Natrona County, and maybe more, so that you get, number one, information from our residents, but number two, so that you can address some of the concerns that you've probably heard 100 times before, and you've heard today, that you've addressed in your information here today. You're asking, I think, for $7,500 for documented expenses, and that Carbon County's authorized $7,500 for its basically half.
Correct.
And it'd be a not-to-exceed number. And now you're saying in 6 months providing something that's 90% done, which then makes me wonder, well, is the next 10% going to cost us, or do we actually own it? So,
You would own it.
all right, well, what's,
Things like the budget, I'm not sure we're going to get to a point where you all agree on a budget to be put into that document, sir. So, and that might require January, February. I mean, I think there's going to be a $500,000 budget. It's going to be coming from different sources, from donations, fees, services, and so on and so forth. But you all would have to stamp your approval of that.
Yeah, we don't have the authority to finalize, or to approve it, which is where the other 10% comes in.
Or what office would a future staff person be attached to? That's beyond us. How does Carbon County and Natrona County communicate on this shared project?
That's the 10%.
We can only go so far in answering that question.
Yeah.
And then dressing it up, all the layout, design, to submit it to Congress. We're not experts in that. You would probably need to get somebody at that end to make it look like a really good finished product. We're going to give you the text, we'll give you our best guess in terms of budget, pictures, we'll answer all 10 criteria, and get as close to as 100% as we can.
What Glenn's saying, we don't have the authority to finalize this thing. That's up to you guys.
okay, and then my final question is, my understanding is that you two personally haven't taken one of these from a vision to an actual designation before? Or did I miss that on your experience?
Yeah, no, I was pretty close to that. I wasn't on a feasibility team, but both the South Park one, I was a homeowner resident who participated in the hearings and the open houses, which we would have, by the way, here, and sent in letters and suggestions and reviewed drafts. The Cash Laputa one, because it went through Colorado State University property, which I was the manager of, I was directly involved in that case.
Sorry for missing that. Sorry that I missed that.
Oh, no.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Mills.
So a couple of these have been completed then already? From start to finish for the heritage area? Is that my understanding or not?
I don't-
Across the country?
Yeah, there's 62 national heritage areas designated by Congress. They all have feasibility studies, so this isn't hard to replicate.
So where can I go to view one of these then?
If you Google national heritage areas,
Mm-hmm.
you'll spend all night.
Okay. So is it on a government site or is it?
Everything from Wikipedia to Abraham Lincoln Birthplace National Heritage Area, which is run by a board of directors. So you can go down to the 62 site level, or you can go up to the policy level of the Park Service to see how they answer these questions and so forth.
One of the unique things is, this would be the only one in Wyoming. There isn't any. So introduction of a national heritage area in Wyoming is new to most people. When we bring it up, they say, we never heard of it. That's right, because you don't have any. So it actually adds to the overall system of parks and refuges and recreation areas and a national heritage area too. But this would be the only one in Wyoming, which is actually kind of cool, and it's certainly beneficial that they'll come here to see National Heritage. These places are highly important. All these pathways that we have are just, they're big time. You want to attract people.
Jim, could I embellish my answer to your question?
Sure.
This FAQs, page 3 and 4, that was taken verbatim from the.
Oh, there we go.
The
Okay.
site. And then if you go down to next steps, or if you go back to number 12, what are the next steps going forward? Number 3 is completion of a feasibility study. There's the website for a feasibility study.
Got it. Thank you.
That's the 10 criteria that we would need to answer. That's the table of contents that they tend to use. So there is a roadmap. There's a good bit of roadmap already in place for us to copy.
And there are other National Heritage areas in progress by the National Park Service. So people go out and hire the national, let's just say Natrona County decide to want someday to do a National Heritage Area study for them. They'll go out and contract with the Park Service. And the Park Service takes up to 5 years, and the cost is somewhere between $50,000 and $70,000 according to the complexity of the project. And what we're offering you is, we will do the feasibility study, except the part we can't do because of authorization of it and that sort of thing. We're donating that time to you. Why would we do that? We donate time to lots of places and other countries even. Glenn and I do volunteer work. We're at that point in our lives where it's not about the money. We'd like to give back. We've been in this recreation, parks, and tourism business for a long, long, long time. And so we want to offer you an opportunity we're going to help you with, do our best, and it will have meaningful results forever for Natrona and Carbon County.
Mr. Chairman, I'm all for strengthening Wyoming's ability to have visitors come here. And to strengthen, we have a beautiful country now. I share with the other commissioners concerns about whether it would interfere with somebody's land, or if is it some gimmick by the federal government to come in and do things that we just don't want to have happen in Wyoming. But I don't see it that way. What I do see is, I hear, correct me if I'm wrong, what I hear is that you want us to donate $7,500, and you do a feasibility study. Nothing binds us to anything.
Correct.
And we roll the dice, and if the dice comes up right, and this heritage thing happens, and the people of these counties agree to it, it'll be a good thing for them. Is that kind of what I'm hearing you, how you would sum it up?
Exactly correct. 100% correct.
And gentlemen, by having Travis Moore with the Carbon County Commissioners as part of the team, and hopefully Commissioner North as part of the team, so that we can communicate. We're just not going to come back to you in January, but to have a dialogue. So when, Jim, you get a concern, you could say something to Dave, and then we dig into it to make sure that we address it as part of the feasibility study. So it's not, we see you later in January, but let's work together.
Only thing we're doing is cover our cost. I mean, it's all, I mentioned it's been 5 times Casper in the last few months working on this, and so it gets pretty expensive pretty quick. So
do you
that's all
want
we're asking.
did
Just
Carbon County pay the whole $7,500 up front?
They just set up an account within their tourism office.
And you're able to draw up to $7,500.
We haven't drawn anything.
we're still doing ourselves.
$84 to fill his tank to get home.
So we do have another question for you, though. Have you consulted with the Natrona County Historic Preservation Society?
We had a meeting with
Oh,
them
yeah.
last week.
Yeah, last
Yeah.
week.
What was their position on this? What were their thoughts?
There were a couple people in the room, I don't know if they were part of the commission or not, that had concerns about people coming to Natrona County. They were having a board meeting after our meeting, so I don't know what that discussion was. We weren't privy to that discussion.
Some of the
So
people,
we had a presentation and then left.
some people were part of the discussion, but not part of the commission.
Mr.
Well,
We had people, go ahead.
I appreciate the willingness to incur the fees, to donate your time. What I would not want is a surprise that there are cost overruns and now it's going to cost us 10,000 or 10,000 more, that kind of thing. So I need to make sure that there's a comfort level with it being a not to exceed number. If you can do it for $2,000, fine, you just submit the receipts, we pay them in our ordinary course. But once we get to $7,500, we're done, we're still gonna get the work product.
Yeah, I would think a little letter of understanding would be appropriate.
So last week, we experienced people hate the government. They hate people from Colorado. They don't want anything to do with Carbon County.
It was a rather rude meeting.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Mill.
and don't take this wrong, I'm curious. It's a philosophical type question of the program, okay? So my understanding of what you presented and everything is that the National Historic Area takes and lines up this big border, say it's the desk, right? This is the area, it's the sideboards of the desk. But the only thing that's interesting is Commissioner Nicolasen's computer. So instead of just designating the computer, we're designating this whole desk. Why is it in such a broad sweeping reach instead of just the specific points of interest?
Great question, and one of the options is rather than taking both counties, so to speak, we're going to put, these are auto tour visits to heritage sites. People are in cars, they're not backpacking. So why not just designate the area as part of the, as a band along your major paved highways where there are heritage sites? In other words, in the Southern Revolution Campaign National Heritage Area, it's not all of Georgia and South Carolina, but it's the corridor
Right.
of where the battles and the troops went. So it's more of a linear approach. The Mormon Pioneer Trail National Heritage Area is very linear, and it just goes through the heritage sites. So if that would make you more comfortable, that's a real option.
So keeping that in mind, that it's a route.
Yes.
Let's use Oregon Trail as an example, right? So you've got this route. Would the county be on the hook to improve that road that goes through there significantly? I mean, going from
Absolutely not.
Oregon Gap to Ryan Hill is a
Absolutely
treacherous road at times.
Absolutely not.
Keep in mind, the whole thing is that, number one, the only people manages this property are people that are part of the operation.
Right.
There's no standards, there's no inspections, there's none of this sort of stuff. It's just whatever the county wants to do with their county roads is up to them.
Another question too, real quick, and you may not be able to answer it, but Google or whatever mapping system you want out there may send people, they try to send truckers over the mountain, try to send people out, like I said, down Oregon Trail when it's nasty and the 220's closed, and I'm out there pulling people out with the tractor because they don't have the lick of sense. Would that increase that probability?
We don't think so.
No, I mean, if you have an app and your coordinator is sitting in Visit Casper's office and the local sheriff's department says we're shutting down 220, That can be done in 5 minutes, not even 5 minutes.
So it could even be posted on that app then?
Oh,
too?
yeah,
Huh.
for sure.
Okay,
And
thank
we'd
you.
want to, because there's some gnarly kind of trails out there at certain times of the year.
We've had some interest in, this original map did not include this much land, but we've been interested that Natrona County needs to include northern Natrona County, Carbon County, one to southern Carbon County in there. So our input has been, we'd like to have all the county, the total land mass of both counties. It doesn't hurt anything. It doesn't add anything, doesn't subtract from anything. It's just part of the land mass. Because there's something to be said for Natrona County as a national heritage area. That means something to the people in Natrona County, I guarantee you, because Natrona County is big time into heritage. And the whole county actually has heritage areas. Whether they participate in this thing or not is another issue. What we found out in New Mexico with National Heritage Area there is that a lot of the ranchers were reluctant to get involved. But over time, they all came in because they saw the value of tourism for their ranches, historical ranches and things like that. And they started little tourism ranches, providing lodging, providing opportunities for people to stay at a ranch, at historical ranches and other places. So all the ranchers started, who were reluctant and didn't want anything to do with it, started coming into the system, to being a part of it. So
On the flip side, when you have these two large blocks of land, it gives people the impression they can go anywhere and do anything. And that's why having more of a linear, that the roads where your heritage assets are located, which are largely somewhere along the road, that would be one of our alternatives to look at, would be the National Heritage Area.
But even if you got this map and it's on your app, you're going to go to the historical center. You're going to stop at the Mormon handcart site. You're going to go to the prison in Rollins. You're going to go to these places who are cooperators, because those who are not won't be listed in the app. You're not even going to know they're there. And that's why people start saying, man, maybe it's a good thing. Maybe I should join this thing because it actually might have some benefits to me.
Okay.
A lot of details.
And currently, right now, you're just proposing, we're just looking at the proposed feasibility study,
That's
not
all.
anything further, correct?
Mr. Chairman, just a second moment. You guys do know that we're elected by the public, and we owe the public of Natrona County the best we can give them. So there probably are some residents that you may need to convince of this, because if I have people coming in here, I'm only speaking for myself right now. The other commissioners will speak for themselves. But if I have people coming in here, people that I know that are residents and they're against this, that would influence me. So if there are questions that you haven't answered to certain groups, I would suggest maybe you check that out and answer their questions, because I think you're doing a marvelous job answering them here. But some of these people are in better touch with this kind of thing than I am. So I rely very heavily on my constituents to advise me. And then I check it out, and I try to make sure that everybody gets a fair shake. So that's just how I'm thinking about it.
We would promise to do that, keeping in mind, we haven't started the study yet.
Yes.
So we haven't really started listening real hard. We were just trying to get some sense of interest.
Thank you.
But
And
yes,
I hear
understand what
that.
you're saying.
But I'm just telling you how we kind of,
I understand.
And on the other hand, if Natrona County is not interested in this at all, and then the whole thing probably just goes away, including Carbon County, because Carbon County and Natrona County need each other in this
Right.
process.
but I think we're all probably, we listen pretty carefully to our constituents, at least I do, and I think these gentlemen do as well. And so I would want to hear from those people. And this is probably taking some of them a little by surprise. It's on YouTube, they'll hear about this. I know there's some gentlemen in here that want to speak to it right now, but they can't due to our rules. They'll have to come back when we start our regular meeting and address us when the public has an opportunity to address us. So you can watch it all on YouTube if you want, or come down if you want, either way. But we just kind of would like to flesh it out, at least I would, and I know they would, because it sounds like a good idea, but on the other hand, we people here in Wyoming, we don't need the federal government bothering us too much, really.
Yeah.
We'd prefer they don't.
We trust you guys to make the right decision, what's best for the county.
Thank
If you don't think this is best for the county, then that's it.
Gentlemen, I appreciate you coming in today. I think that we do want to take some time I know time's of the essence for you, but we do want to take some time because I respect the opinion of Visit Casper. I'd like to hear what they have to say about it. I'd like to know what the city of Casper has to say. We have groups that may or may not be in favor of this, but at the end of the day, we'd like to weigh it all out before we make a decision, so.
We request that you let Carbon County know something before too long.
Yeah, we'll probably get in touch with them too to make sure see what their take is on it down there. So, because we're going to be partners, it only makes sense to have those discussions.
That's all we can ask, and we hope, it's,
Thank you for your time.
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Appreciate you coming in.
We had a really good time at rodeo.
Yeah, it would- Thank you.
I would definitely do that again.
Well, we're going to have another one soon, so come on back.
Christy, do you have somebody here, or can I swap positions with you real quick?
I have the planner from Mills, but if you want to swap us.
If I could, yeah, I'm sorry, I hate to get out of order, but if we could just switch it up real quick. And let's move on to pace setters. Nick Hughes, John Johnson, and the transfer of the gambling license from Econo Lodge to Mesa Liquors. How you doing?
Hi, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name's Pete Ligori. I'm a stand-in for Mr. Hughes, who couldn't be here.
Okay.
And the gentleman to my right is Matt Michaeli. Matt represents us in government affairs and regulatory matters. And part of the discussion we wanted to have today was including a legal update on some activity that's been happening in the state we think is
Is there a
important.
microphone on?
So,
Is that on?
here we
Oh,
go.
it wasn't.
Sorry.
Nope, you're good.
So, look, wanted to say thank you for letting us give you an update on our HHR and OTB operations in Natrona County and Casper. Really wanted to cover three brief parts today. One is a bit of a chronology in terms of what happened to us at Econo Lodge. Wanted to ask Matt to give you a brief update on some legal activities, and then last we'll close with talking about how we'd like to proceed and get your input and figure out next steps as we move forward. So, and I also wanted to briefly introduce a couple of the people in the audience. We have our Wyoming General Manager, Steve Jimenez, with us, Mike Lockhart and John Johnson, who ultimately will become our landlords in the transfer. So wanted to give them an opportunity to add any comments if they thought appropriate. But going back to the issue that we're here is we have two OTB outlets in Natrona County, Casper. One is at 71 Southeast Wyoming Boulevard. It's a building we own. We have a restaurant, bar, and so on. The second location was a lease space inside a hotel, the Econo Lodge on F Street. And that location was relatively new, probably about 2 years ago. And last summer, we started to notice some things going on at the property. Things weren't being repaired as well. Lights were out all over the place. Just more and more problems as the summer crept on. We ultimately had to step in and advance rent payments, as well as even pay some utility bills to try to keep the property open. We were working with the owner at the time to figure out what was going on. We ultimately found out they were having significant financial trouble, and ultimately turned the property over to a bank out of Salt Lake. And while we tried to work with the Celtic Bank, is the name of the bank, in Salt Lake, to figure out if we could stay in that location, ultimately they made the decision, as we thought appropriate too, that if we were the only activity in the property, it probably wasn't a good thing, so we made the decision to voluntarily close. We transferred our equipment, our people, our staff out of the facility so the bank could proceed with what they were going to do. Once that occurred, we immediately started looking for a new location. We do believe we want two locations in Casper and Natrona County. We had two. We want two again. And we were lucky enough to find really great partners in the Johnson Group, and we were able to negotiate a lease. And the goal and the plan was really to transfer the business and relocate the equipment, et cetera, to the new location. The new location, as I think you saw in the packages we provided, is at 3243 Talon Drive. It's next to a Fuzzy's restaurant. It's a great combination with our business because people like to eat, want to give them the opportunity to do so. So we think it's a win-win for both locations. We secured and signed a lease, and at this point, the operation in the new location is really going to be smaller than what we had in the Econo Lodge, roughly about 15% smaller. And we think that's the right size for that location and think that's appropriate. Roughly have approximately 85 HHR units plus an OTB bedding facility and some other amenities in the location. The original location we had was approved for 100 units, and we just don't believe we need that number at this point. The economic benefit of losing the site to us after 2 years in the Econo Lodge was kind of hard. As you can imagine, we had projected at least a 5 to 10 year run at that property, and it kind of knocked the wind out of our sails. But our view is the money's sunk, it's gone, we need to move on, and we're willing to invest and improve the property that we're talking about going into. We think that investment in total will be roughly about $2 million by the time we're done, between equipment and renovation. We do believe that the economic benefit to Natrona County will be about approximately $245,000 a year, similar number to the city of Casper, and we'll obviously be bringing back the jobs we had at the Econo Lodge, which is roughly about 10 to 12 jobs in that location. The horse industry, which is the reason we're here, is also going to be benefiting. We expect to contribute roughly about $200,000 a year to the Breeders' Fund from that property, and about $150,000 increase in purses that we give out in our live race meets as a result of that property. And we've been really approaching this transition and this change with full transparency, and by that I mean we've been really engaging with all the stakeholders all along the process that we've been going through. We've met with the Mayor Neal, in Casper, city manager, explain what was going on and why we were looking to make the change. They've been very supportive of the process. We've obviously been meeting and discussing some of this with Chairman Friel. We obviously thought appropriate to talk about the process with the whole commission. We've also been having conversations with the Gaming Commission to keep them posted on what's been going on. And, in the end, their view is that this is simply a transfer of a permit that we have. And we're actually updating the file that we have in terms of our permit with the Gaming Commission. We're essentially taking out one address and putting in another address. It's really that simple from their perspective. Excuse me. So we've been working through this process with everyone, and at this point, we're getting ready to submit the application to the Gaming Commission with that updated permit. And we wanted to make sure that we get an opportunity to talk to you all, make sure you're comfortable with what's going on, make sure you're aware of what's going on, and really try to address any questions you might have. And again, our view is that this is a transfer in terms of one location that was forced to close to now another location. And we'd ask that you treat that the same way as the Gaming Commission. And at this point, I would really ask John or Mike if they have any comments they might like to make at this point.
Good afternoon, Chairman, Commissioners. I'm John Johnson. So we are proposing to lease the space currently known as Mesa Liquor to Pacesetter Gaming. The plan is that we would take our full retail liquor license that we currently hold at Mesa Liquor and transfer it to Fuzzy's Taco Shop. And Fuzzy's Taco Shop would provide food and beverage to the Horse Palace. And we would give our bar and grill license that we currently have at Fuzzy's Taco Shop back to the city of Casper. So, I know new licenses were granted by the legislature this last year, but there will be one more bar and grill license back to the city of Casper that they can use for other purposes. We think it's a good fit for our retail property over there. We think it's a good fit for Fuzzy's Taco Shop. So we certainly would hope you would support the transfer of this location from the Econo Lodge to our property. And if you have any questions, I stand for questions.
Will you still be selling packaged liquor there?
No. Commissioner Laird, the liquor store, we're going to just take all of the liquor store fixtures and move them down to the CY property, down by Ace Hardware to the CY Liquor when we relocate that this fall.
Sounds like a good idea.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Mill.
When did you actually stop operations in the economy?
Thank you.
Commissioner, we actually closed, I believe it was October 19th, 2022.
Okay. I'll have you know, there's only one, Mesa's the only place I've been able to find my tequila, so I'm not really.
Chairman Brill and Commissioners. As introduced, my name is Matt Michael. I'm an attorney at Holland and Hart and Cheyenne, and I've represented Wyoming horse racing for several years now. Did want to just take a couple minutes and mostly answer questions or talk about some of the overarching legal landscape that we're dealing with here. First is a reiteration of Wyoming horse racing and Pacesetter commitment to transparency, commitment to working with you and making sure that everything that happens is you guys have had a chance to participate in and feel comfortable with. We sent the gaming application, the application we're going to submit to the Wyoming Gaming Commission to Heather. I don't know if you had a chance to review that, but we're happy to share that with you and look at it and go through that. This is a unique situation in that there is a resolution on record from the commission that already has approved OTB for Wyoming horse racing. It's certainly my legal position that we don't need to do a second resolution, that I think the appropriate legal path forward is a letter of support if the commission is so inclined, because it is just a transfer. As we talked about, the only changes to what's happening at the Gaming Commission is a change of address. So our request would be a letter of support. And let me talk a little bit about why I think that that's important and why it's an issue that I worry about as their legal counsel. This is one of those areas that are tricky, right? Where the Wyoming legislature has set up the Gaming Commission to regulate the gaming aspect of it. And we have been involved in a long process with a different county that, again, in our position and what we argued to the Wyoming Supreme Court and were successful on is overstepping those bounds, because there are lots of different considerations that impact statewide. We talked about the Breeders' Fund. We talked about these live days of racing, and there's lots of statewide considerations that have to go into account that the Gaming Commission was set up and given the authority to do. We certainly want to work with you. We certainly want to be here. We want to be a partner. But we want to protect, my job as the lawyer here is to try to protect Wyoming horse racing from getting in this position where we have dual regulatory bodies that can and have put inconsistent restrictions on the gaming industry. And so and we've seen some resolutions, and I think everything in the resolution is consistent with what's in our application. It's going to be the same thing. From a legal standpoint, it's important that we recognize the entity that has the ultimate control over those things, and then the role that we have of working with you, making sure you're comfortable with it, and the ultimate approval comes from the Gaming Commission. So that's my caution, that's my concern. And again, just to be blunt, we also have, we won the Supreme Court case. I have that opinion here. I can talk that through with any of you at any time as much as you would like. But there also is pending litigation, frankly, against the county. And so anything that we do has an impact on pending litigation. And so our preference would be not a formal resolution. Our preference would be a letter that you can set out, that you've reviewed the application. If you get to that point, you've reviewed the application, you agree with the limitations that the Gaming Commission will put in there, and so long as the Gaming Commission follows what has been represented in here that you approve. I think that's the right way that the statutes work, but I'm open to answer questions or talk about any of that that you would like to.
Commissioner Nicholas.
Thank you. First of all, thanks for coming up today. Appreciate that. Mr. Johnson, you've made an incredible investment in this particular part of our town, and we appreciate that. And, in other places in this community as well, you're one of our pillars here in the community. And I'm pleased that this organization has selected you and your companies and your people to partner. I'd say that my job is to protect health, safety, and welfare of people in this community. I'd say that I'm very frustrated with the Wyoming legislature for not giving us clear guidance in matters exactly like this. I think that what we, what counties have done in the past is things like moratoria when there's uncertainty, just put a complete stop on certain types of development. The county did that back in the early days of the wind energy development with the Chevron Texaco wind farm here. I'm not suggesting that be, that we go down that path at all. But it's unfortunate, the horse is out of the barn at this point. Some of the commissioners had an opportunity to go look at some of the facilities operating in this community, and one of the things that was provided at the time was a map of the number of establishments in Natrona County, and we are winning the game here. We have many more establishments. I think the nearest is 7 in Fremont or Cheyenne. This will be the 11th, or they're somewhere in that dozen range. So the landscape's changed, in my opinion, but yet we don't have a clear picture of what our responsibilities are, other than I think a general, commonly understood from a legal perspective that it's to protect the health, safety, and welfare. And I personally would put that up against lots of arguments, especially when there's uncertainty. I'm not suggesting that there's litigation in this case, but I'm saying that we do have a compelling interest to do that. You know, Mr. Michael, you said you want to be a partner. I have provided, we have provided you with the resolution that the county most recently adopted for 307 horse racing, based on a form that Commerce County, frankly, had started. And we didn't like some of it, and we added to it a little bit. And I think that since the landscape's changed, since there's some uncertainty, since this is a new location where there's a new church, there's another church not too far away, there are lots of kids in the area, there are lots of schools in the area, movie theaters in the area, coffee shops in the area, I think very strongly that we need to have a public opportunity for input on this. And I'd like to see that before any letter of consent or approval or resolution from this commission were to go forward. And I think that if you want to do it the right way, and if you want to be a partner to our community, that some of these things, which I think in our resolution form that our county attorney provided, that maybe you jump at saying, yes, we want to do that. Now, maybe there are some things where you have some concerns, but some of them I think are very clear in how we're trying to say, yes, please do invest in our community. Please do employ these people, but let's not let things get out of control here. So I think that, you know, there's a lot of good opportunity here, but you can hear from my perspective, there are some concerns, and it really comes down to location. And so I think that we need to look at the location really carefully to make sure it's appropriate for our community.
Commissioner Milne, I'll come back to you in a minute.
Sure, I don't want to jump ahead.
Do you want me to go first, or what?
Go ahead.
You mentioned a case that's pending. What is that case in what county?
So all of this, all the litigation came out of Campbell County. And I said, it's a long discussion, and I'm happy to have that. But where the commissioners there tried to give a monopoly to one operator over the other two, and then mandate that you had to, there was lots of things that went on there, and shut down two operators without, the Supreme Court.
That issue doesn't apply here, does it?
No, it's not at all. It doesn't apply here. And I don't want to in any way say I'm not threatening anything here, right? That's not, but what happened, what's still going on there, and I agree with Commissioner Nicolason that there's, we're working, all of us are working through this together, right? And we want to be careful, and we want to follow the laws as closely as we can. And what I don't want to have anything that we agree to here used against Wyoming horse racing in a different proceeding in a way that's, and so we just have to be really careful.
But when I hear a lawyer come in and tell me that they won something in the Supreme Court, it's kind of telling me that they're using that influentially to scare us in some way?
No, and I certainly do. And nothing you've done is even close to that. The only reason we bring it up is because I just want you to understand that everything that happens here can impact another case as nothing.
We understand that, but let me ask you this. Mr. Nicolason's a pretty sharp guy, and he redid our last resolution after he found out what they did in Converse County. So that resolution has changed, so that it's different than the other resolutions we've dealt with in the past. So I don't know whether what he was asking is, are you willing to sign the resolution he's prepared or not? Settles the case right there, in my opinion. So maybe you could tell us about that, if you're willing to accept that resolution. Because I don't know that I would ever agree to just send somebody a letter. I think we have the duties that he outlined to you.
Commissioner Laird, I think I heard two things, and I'm trying to parrot, so forgive me. I think you wanted an opportunity to hear from the public. That was one, and I think the second was a more constructive, or more, I don't want to say restrictive, but more particular language in a resolution versus a letter. I think that's what I heard you say.
Correct.
Is that right? So I guess, look, we are committed to having a presence in Casper. We own a building with an existing operation. We want to work with the county, and we will work with the county. That's not what this is about.
My question is, would you sign the resolution?
I'd like to go through the specifics and really discuss each item, if I may. And I think our predominant concern is realistically the term of the renewal, the initial term, only because we're making an investment. And I think because of the recent history with the Econo Lodge, what we don't want to do is have another issue. And I understand the revocation might be really tied to us being bad actors or doing something stupid. I get that, and that's fully our responsibility. So I think that was, one of the ones that jumped out at me is, we're signing a 5-year lease with Mr. Johnson with renewals. If we could line up the resolution with that, I think that would make a lot of sense for us economically. We go through a much shorter renewal cycle with the Gaming Commission. So I think the 5-year term shouldn't scare you in that if you do think we're being, bad actors, I'll use that term, you always have the opportunity to go to the Gaming Commission, and they would hold us accountable and potentially revoke that location license, if you will. I think the thought about reporting back on an annual basis to the community is perfectly fine. As Matt has said, we are going above and beyond in a lot of other locations where we have operations because we want to build that partnership. We want to build that transparency. We just bought this company less than 2 years ago, a year and a half ago. We want to make sure we have a great reputation in Wyoming. We want to make sure that we're part of a positive process. So, and I think, and forgive me, I think the last item, if I remember, in the resolution was a cap on the number of machines, if I remember right. That's actually being covered in our application with the Gaming Commission as well. We're happy to agree to that if that's what's required. That's not an issue because we're only getting permission to put in a certain number of units from the Gaming Commission, so we couldn't go above that even if we wanted to. We'd have to go back and ask for permission. And I don't want to speak for the Gaming Commission, but the view, and it is changing landscape, it seems to be they want to make sure that the counties where we operate are aware of what's going on, which is why we made the decision to really do this in a very transparent way from day one to make sure all the stakeholders were aware of what was going on and there was no surprises. We wanted to make sure everybody understood what we were trying to accomplish and make sure everybody was comfortable with that. So, I know I'm talking probably too much, but essentially, yeah.
We, from a purely legal standpoint, I believe the proper process is we come to you, we talk it through, you agree, but the ultimate approval is at the Gaming Commission. We're not here to say, we value our relationship with you. If you're saying you need a resolution, if you're saying you need a public comment, that's perfectly fine. We're happy to do that. If you're saying you need a resolution, we'll do that because we value our partnership. The specific terms of it, we sent a proposed resolution back as well. I don't know if you had a chance to look at that.
Yes.
What I would hope is, look, at the end of the day, we want to have a good working relationship, and we'll work through that. But what I would hope we could do is work with your attorney and with any of you and answer questions and have a proposed resolution that makes sense if that's what the commission would like to do.
Commissioner Mill.
So I differ a little bit from Peter on this, but I agree a whole lot with him as well. Personally, I see this as a transfer from location to location. However, saying that, the locations are completely different in characteristics, right? What is down by the river is not up by the school or the churches. So I understand, I don't want to interfere with, you guys doing business or anything like that. I also agree with Peter that the legislative body has dropped the ball on this portion of statute, but we are where we are. But your right to do business is good up until you start negatively impacting other people. There's a whole lot of people up in that area, neighborhoods and whatnot, kids, whatever. So my thing isn't so much the resolution or whatever. I see it as a transfer myself as well. However, I do want to hear from those people that have the potential of being impacted. Those are the people that we need to hear from. And if they're good with it, I'm good with it, right? But that's where my cutoff for the transfer is we've got to hear from them. It's a great area, I agree, but with the caveat. So what's the time frame? What are you guys looking at for all this to occur?
The next Gaming Commission meeting is scheduled for July 19th, and that may not work. You'll have to advise us on what's possible. I wasn't quite sure how you wanted to approach the public comment section, if that could be handled at your next meeting in July 5th. Just trying to understand what your thoughts are and what your goals are, what you want to achieve before consideration on this.
I think ideally for us, if possible, and we don't know, that's why we're here, right, is to talk this through, is it would be on the agenda for your July 5th meeting, and you could have comments. I don't know your requirements for notice on that. And then if we had a resolution come out of that, we would take that to the Gaming Commission.
We still do have time to get it onto the 5th. My intention was to try and knock things out today. However, if we need the 5th, we can add on to it. I'm going to add to the comments here because I differ from Peter and differ more from Jim. I differ in the fact that I do feel that it's a transfer. I do want to say that I know what happened with the O'Connell Lodge, and it has nothing to do with this group at all. It has to do with that hotel failing. So I don't think anything should be put back on you because another business failed. The other thing is, looking at it as a transfer itself, we can open it to public opinion and get their input. My fear, because we've all heard it, is that people feel that we're becoming overrun by gaming establishments within the community. They don't want to become a little Reno. And so we open it up to public comment, and if the public comes back and says, well, we don't want this, they're already established. This is a transfer. This is not a new license. It's not a new facility. It's a facility that's been in place. And so to open it back up to the public, to get the comments that you know you're going to get of saying, we don't want another gaming establishment. This is not another gaming establishment. It's the same amount that we've had.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Chairman.
Okay, now I sparked everybody.
My thinking, just if I can, really quickly in response to that.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Laird. Mr. Chairman, there may be folks that don't like gaming. There may be folks that don't like gambling. They may not like Atlantic City or Reno or Vegas. I think this commission has the ability to filter a lot of the kind of stuff we might hear and put more weight on specifics as to this location that might actually, number one, allow the public to be heard, which I think is, I'll encourage that. I'll usually go that direction rather than not. I think that's wise and helps us to make good decisions, but also to that point, it might help us make some tweak some of the, finer points if there's something that we didn't think of, because while Mr. Johnson and you guys know this area very well, and we think we do too, we don't live there. We don't go to school there. And so in that sense, it might actually help us more narrowly tailor the thing, whether it's resolution or some sort of short form agreement. So that's why I think there's value in that, which I think can be done on the 5th.
So my thoughts are is that it is a transfer. Don't hold anything against you for other bad owners. I know the business people involved here, and they've been fairly successful, and they run a pretty good ship, in my opinion. I've known them for years. I am concerned about what the public thinks, just like our last group with the Heritage deal. I want to hear what our people say. So I would base my vote based upon what I hear them say, but you can have 10 people show up here that are against it, and there's 5,000 that are for it, and so we understand that too. I just want to hear from people around there, like Mr. Nicolason does. They may tell us something we never thought of, never heard of, because there is a brand-new Mormon temple going up not too far from where this is. I can't speak for them, but they're fair people, I know that much. And so I want to hear them, and then I want to have you accept a resolution that's prepared by our lawyer. And get your deal made and get it open.
Commissioner Milne.
We're willing to do that. And
Good.
work with the county.
Good, yeah.
We're not here
I believe that.
to be
I believe that.
argumentative. you know.
So I don't think, Chairman Frill, I don't think anybody's blaming them for Econom's business operations or anything like that. I think we all know there's a differentiation between what happened there and their business profile. I understand your guys' desire to protect your business interests as well as for the term of the resolution. Potentially, if you're going to have a 5-year lease, maybe have a 5-year resolution or something like that to revisit it. So I'm not entirely opposed to that either. So I want the county to do business with y'all.
Sure.
But I want to make sure that those folks that are impacted, that area, they have a chance to visit with
It's
us.
fair and reasonable. I can't argue with that. That makes perfect sense.
Commissioner North.
Thank you. I think that this is a transfer. I'm looking at it that way. I also don't share some of these concerns about what the other commissioners, but I do believe that we need to have a resolution. I do believe that the public needs to have input. Anytime we do something like that, I think that's part of transparency, and that's really all it comes down to. I can't see that being a major change in the complexion of the neighborhood up there when you already have a bar and grill license right next door to it. You already have a liquor store right there. I don't see any difference. That's my personal feeling. If you've got a liquor store in there, it doesn't make much difference to me whether it's gambling or liquor. It's all the same.
Just no dancing.
So, I don't see any difference in that, but I do believe that it needs to come before the public in a public meeting and allow the public to have the opportunity to give us their opinion at that time. And I do agree that we need to have a resolution.
Okay.
You've already been established in one location, and whether that location wasn't the best or not, there's obviously a reason why Mr. Johnson is willing to lease you that property and move his business to a different location, and move the inventory and stuff. There's a reason for that.
Right.
People move businesses all the time. And sometimes what looks like a good place is not always as good as you'd think. So, but I do believe that we need to hear that in a public setting and have everybody have an opportunity to come talk to us about it.
And so just to follow up, as I understand, our next steps would be, I would like to talk through some of the specific language with the attorney and certainly, we proposed one back, we tried to get together, and it hasn't happened, just, I was out of office and different things. But I look forward to that and have those discussions and.
What are your concerns?
Ooh. I want to read it. I don't have it here in front of me, but I think we'll be in a good place. They're not major concerns.
I think good next steps would be for our attorney to talk with you. I think that Commissioner Nicolason, he's done a lot of the research on the back end of this, so I think that between the three of you, you can work on those details and get to a place that we're all comfortable with that. In the meantime, we can do a publication, let the public give their input to us. We'll have a turnaround time on that to get the information back, and then from there, I think we can move forward.
Would your expectation be that we make a presentation on the July 5th, or just be available? Just trying to understand the expectations, so.
I honestly think just be available on the 5th if need be with questions, but I'm hoping that we can get this worked out between the three of you, and then we'll listen what the public has to say.
Right, okay. And my assumption is we'll have a resolution that everybody's comfortable with before then. So
That's what I was thinking.
Hoping to get that done by the 5th, and then that way you can still make the 19th meeting with the Gaming Commission.
That would be great.
Okay?
Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate you all coming in.
Thank you.
Mike, did you have anything you wanted to say today?
Another motion to the CY.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks, John. Well, okay, I got Christie, come on up. Sorry, we got you like way behind schedule now.
That is okay. Hopefully this shouldn't take very long.
Okay. You,
I'm sorry.
You need
Megan, come on.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman,
good
Commissioners.
afternoon.
All right. So the item that we have before you today is in regards to a de-annexation. And y'all should have a map of the area in question. Does anybody need an extra map?
I think we're good.
Okay. So I'm just going to quickly go through the different parcels and let you know what you're reading on the map. Parcels A, B, C, and D are all owned by the city of Casper. Parcel E is owned by the county. Parcels F and G are not going to be a part of this conversation today. So the area on the map that is highlighted in the pink area, so all the faded overlay pink, is the items that are in the parcels that are in the Mills jurisdiction. The east half of parcel A and B are in county jurisdiction. Everything south of the parcels are within the city of Casper's jurisdictional boundary. So the background and history on this is the city of Mills has approached the city of Casper and the county in regards to adjusting their jurisdictional boundaries to match the alignment with the North Platte River. With the river being a natural barrier, this discussion has been about the best use of resources, responding to events in this area, which would include the county. And this has been an ongoing conversation with the municipalities and the county for a while about adjusting this jurisdictional boundary. So we have Megan Nelms here today with the City of Mills in support of all this action.
Yes.
So why are we bringing it to the commission? There's two reasons. The first is Wyoming Statute 15-1-421A requires the applicant of a de-annexation to submit a petition to the county and for the county to provide a report on the impact of the de-annexation within 60 days. So when the city of Casper submits their de-annexation letter to the city of Mills, they will also submit a letter to the county, and that will prompt us to start the action of a de-annexation report. The county also owns that property E, so we will be co-petitioners with this action in order to clean up this boundary line. So we'll petition as well to the city of Mills to change the jurisdictional boundary and de-annex from Mills. There are certain timetables and highlights that we have to meet, so we're trying to coordinate all the entities together so that we're all working off of the same timetable and nobody misses any deadlines. The process of adjusting boundaries between municipalities requires a two-step process. So statute allows for the de-annexation back into the county jurisdiction, and then the second step would be the city of Casper to then go through their process of annexing their properties back into their jurisdiction. So the period of time between the de-annexation and the annexation, those properties will be within the county's jurisdiction. But it should only be about 6 to 9 months that would happen. Again, all the planners are trying to work together to coordinate these activities and make sure we're hitting the right milestones and have the coordination from all of our boards and councils. So I attached a draft copy of the letter of de-annexation and a draft resolution in your packet. Following the de-annexation, the city of Casper is going to initiate their annexation application for parcels A, B, C, and D. And we can choose to become a co-applicant with that and bring our parcel E into the city of Casper boundary at that point in time as well. And that will completely clean up the jurisdiction and the boundaries. So my request today is that the commission, by resolution, sign the request for de-annexation from the city of Mills. And I'll stand for questions.
Hey, Chairman.
Let me add one thing to that. So I have been in contact with, I think you talked to the fire department, I've been in contact with the sheriff, knowing that this 6 to 9 month period of time, it's going to become our duty to respond to calls out there until the annexation takes place. They're aware of that, and there's no issues whatsoever. Commissioner Mill.
Thank you. Talked about this before already, but I'm going to just ask again, is there any way to speed up that 6 to 8 month period? It's all due to timetables, isn't it?
It is all due to the timetables that are required for annexation.
Yeah.
And the report and their public meetings.
Yeah.
So.
But other than that, I'm all in favor of it.
Commissioner Nicolason.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks for being here today, Megan. Christie, the very concise, clear presentation. Thank you for that. I think we should move forward. I don't know why we need to own parcel E. It looks like it's mostly river channel. But maybe there's a conversation down the road with a municipality about a transfer of that. So anyway, I think this is straightforward. The only thing is if we drug it out a couple years, we'd have some property tax potentially.
Commissioner Laird.
My understanding of this has been that the city is really interested in carrying their tree project, and they don't want any gaps in it, so it would come down that side of the Mills side. And of course, did you say E is the property we own?
Yes.
So that what they need to be able to do is get down to that side for their tree project. I don't know if that's come up or not in this, but it was curious to me as to why it needs to be de-annexed rather than just be done by a mutual agreement or a deeding the property.
So, Mr. Chairman, the statute Title 15 has specific requirements for de-annexation along with annexation. And so within that 15-1-421, it outlines the multiple steps that have to be taken in order for any property owner to de-annex their property from a municipality.
Commissioner Laird, because some of it's already been annexed into mills, it's not like it's just unannexed county property. We have to.
So the other question, Peter, and maybe you've researched this, is that the general law in Wyoming is that the ownership, when a river passes through something, if there's one owner on one side and one owner on the other side, they each have the rights up to the middle of the river. So I know that was an issue for the city to get their trees planted because they thought that they controlled to the other side of the river. And I know that that's an issue. You're smiling, Mr. Former Mayor. I'm just wondering if it really requires a de-annexation or it can be a simple quitclaim deed sort of thing.
I don't think it's ownership.
Right, we're just looking at jurisdictional
Yeah.
boundaries, not ownership. Mills doesn't want any of the property, and they just don't want it in their boundaries any longer. They want Casper to take it.
But they want access to the river, don't they?
We'll still have it on the opposite side.
Isn't that the side, though, that the city wants to plant the trees?
Commissioner Laird, this doesn't have anything to do with the river restoration project. I think that they're actually working together on that
Yes.
stretch of the river for the project.
Well, I was told about this whole thing, and it had to do with the river restoration.
It does not, and actually it has to do with Isaac Walton Park, if you really, or the trailer park. in
Which
there.
I'm not objectionable to. It's not like I'm objecting to it, but at one time it was explained to me that it was partially due to the restoration of the river. That's where I got
Yeah, I'm
confused
just-
when I saw this.
So, as the
I'm
county
not against it or
representative, I don't really
anything.
care what the city wants to do. It's our jurisdiction.
Correct.
Mr. Chairman, this has
Not yet.
really been motivated from the City of Mills' perspective in cleaning up their jurisdictional boundary. So it's been a large conversation between the City of Mills and the City of Casper about cleaning up that jurisdictional boundary. We get to act as the middleman in between de-annexing and letting them re-annex.
Mr. Chairman.
It'll actually be our jurisdiction for a period of time. Go ahead, Commissioner North.
This has been a problem for a long time, and I know when I was with Mills Fire Department, we ended up having to go to Isaac Walton quite often, and everything on that north side, and that was always a big question of why. And I do agree that this is a good move. What I would like to see, though, for clarity or cleanness, is moving that property line when it's adjusted, just right down the river, just so Mills has got the north half of the river, Casper's got the south half of the river. Just for clarity
I don't think they
purposes,
wanna
that's all I'm saying.
And Christy and I started talking about that, and then I also brought up to her, we have a property off Van Horn Avenue that half of it's in Mills and half of it's in the county because somebody annexed to the section line instead of
Right.
describing the parcel. So I think we have a few future projects we can work together and get that straightened out, get some of those things.
Yeah.
So that these people can build the house and the things they want without confusion of
It
who's
just makes things a lot cleaner. It really does, and
Saves
that's
resources.
especially when you're talking about municipalities in the county. There's absolutely no reason why this shouldn't have been done a long time ago, and why as Isaac Walton was included in Mills. I never did understand that. That didn't make any sense at all.
In
So,
my short time in Mills, I've just heard that it's, multiple responses, and
Yes.
that's not a wise use of our taxpayer dollars, so if we can just have it clean
Well-
and everybody knows who's gonna respond where.
well, and in all reality, Mills is still gonna be responding to a lot of that stuff because they're gonna get there quicker than everybody else. So,
And I talked to, Fire Marshal and Brian, the chief of police over there, and he's also talked to the sheriff, so I think everybody's on the same page. And I sent Christie a letter from Mills saying we're all working together, so it should be straightforward.
So, Mr. Chairman, at this point, we just need to know if this is a consent item for tonight or the 5th, or how to proceed with the resolution. To a consent agenda item for the 5th?
Is it gonna be the 5th, or is it as soon as
the
Casper, as you
5th,
guys
this is-
submit
Or-
your petition?
The 4th is on Tuesday, so it's the 5th.
I just-
Usually be the earliest we could get to it, 4th is a holiday.
I just want to make sure that you guys, Casper and you all submit the petition, because that starts the
Right.
60-day clock, and we don't.
And
Even
Craig-
if it takes you less, Craig talked about us not doing anything till after the 60 days.
When is Casper doing theirs?
Casper is ready to submit theirs now. They're just waiting for us.
But
So
if they
that-
submit theirs, that starts the clock, correct?
That starts their clock and a different clock for us, and then we'd have to put our petition in, and that starts yet a third clock.
So if Casper waits until the 5th,
Then
Then we
Craig and
can
I
all
can
do it at
walk
the
them
same
into the
time.
office together.
Okay.
So we'll do it on,
let's do that.
I'll tell Craig July 6th. We'll walk it into the office at Mills, will be our goal.
Okay.
And let Christine know.
Okay.
Awesome, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Gee, we finished on time, kind of.
No, we're not.
We didn't?
We're an hour behind right now.
For the early meeting?
We're an hour behind.
What else?
Heather, now we're to you. Do you have anything before we go to exec?
Well, let me,
Yeah.
What are the consent items?
well, let me update you on the Cedar Springs. They cut out the request for the lodging tax, so they did not approve that. So the county was only awarded just over $40,000 for the other two items. They also cut that item out for Converse County as well.
In the past, have they?
That's been a frequent, because we lose that tax. Once those employees, that long-term employee stays in a hotel,
For
we
more
lose
than 30
all,
days,
not
you
only
lose the
lodging, but
tax.
any sales tax. that they
So we just, I didn't explain it well enough, I guess. and I was
No, you
telling
explained
guys
it
didn't
fine.
either. But that's disappointing.
It is.
We made a very reasonable request. Next time we're asking for parks and sheriff and
Everything
Tracy's
else.
office and, I know I screwed up.
That's disheartening, that's unfortunate.
It is, and so the updates that I got, they did approve the additional money to Mills and to Evansville.
We should have asked for additional money for some camp.
They cut Glen Rock in half, their request in half. They cut Rolling Hills' request by about $100,000. I don't know about Douglas.
So they just cut the lodging tax from us?
And from Converse County, their request
Okay.
included that
So
as
we got
well.
everything else, just not the lodging
Yeah,
tax.
that's correct. And my understanding is that apparently they did not consider that an unmitigated impact, and that's the reason why, although, you know, I don't have the details.
Got a lot more hotels than they did last time we went through this, so. Big part of the reason.
But I think that's the only item I had for you that outside of executive session items.
Yeah, those are just the Heather, are there any, are there any issues, concerns, or changes to the professional services contracts with, I think those are all attorneys?
They are, so I think the only change that I'm aware of is they requested additional money than they had under the previous contract. Jill Keister reviewed that, and I believe that the payment comes out of her budget for these contracts, if I'm not mistaken, and she didn't have any concerns, so that was the only change, was an increase.
And then that's covered in her budget.
I believe so, yeah.
Do you have anything else we need to cover then before we go to
I
exec?
don't think so, unless you have any questions about any of these items for me.
Make a motion to go in exec for personnel.
Second.
Motion made by Commissioner Mountain, second by Commissioner Laird. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
We're in executive session.